All right, you're all ready to get in it? Okay. So it's always appropriate to talk about building your business, and a lot of our folks are, coming right out of corporate, or they haven't had a lot of experience actually closing a deal and selling their services. They might have, had a team that delivered services or whatever, maybe they're accounting and finance. So learning how to get in front of a prospective client and process you use to, get to yes is something that's kind of foreign to them. So we always like to spend a lot of time, if we can, talking about, how do you close more deals? I've become an avid reader lately of Scott Adams. Everybody know who Scott is? The author of Dilbert. He's written 3 or 4 books, and Scott has become, pretty well known for his ability to influence people and his communication skill. One of the things that Scott promoted in his last book, which was How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, Scott said that goals are useless. What he meant was goals are useless if you don't have a system. So you really need to, have a system and work the system. So, I like to keep that in mind as we talk about, how do you sell consulting services? So it's always good to start off with a little, audience participation and get the blood pumping and everything. Anybody got any interesting stories about maybe a deal you've just closed or one you missed, or kind of problems you might be having out there? Come on.
Give us one. What do you want?
Okay.
So I've been in transition. The consulting thing kind of came as a natural part of why we moved in this state. I've known it for 15 years plus. But I put a proposal out. I got through connections and networking. I put a proposal to a small restaurant chain in Mississippi. And had conversations on the telephone. You first got the connection, had the conversations, and the setup on what they were, investigated them, and all that. Put a proposal together. And then provided to them, and they said, "Hey, great proposal, but we're going to stick with what we were planning to do anyway," because they basically were a PE firm with financial people making a marketing plan for a company that didn't know much about marketing and positioning and things. I found all sorts of holes in my low-hanging fruit. I don't know whether I priced myself too high or if they really weren't that interested. They just did a favor to a friend who got me in. I don't know the reasons why, but they just said thank you very much. That has never happened. That sound familiar?
Yeah, all too familiar. It's. Anybody else have anything to add?
Sure, I'll throw one out.
Oh, good.
I did a 6-month project for a health advisory group here in Atlanta, where I was doing surveying their clients. They'd never really gotten customer feedback. Did a great job. They were thrilled, and they teed me up with their broker dealer to see if they wanted, maybe they wanted to suggest this service to other members of this broker dealer. Talked with the head guy who would be, the no-go. The feedback that I got was they spoke with my customer. They said the customer loves you. They were thrilled with all the outcomes. But this is a very bespoke, very expensive program that you're offering, and we're not sure that it has mass appeal. So we'll help you market on a one-on-one basis, but we're not going to roll this out, to our entire thing. So that, of course, was disappointing. So I don't know if that's a helpful example.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll come back to that. Somewhere along the way, it must be about qualifying the prospect too. But no, those are disappointing. I closed a deal in May or so for a client that is in Chapter 11. And, the problem with working in Chapter 11, they always call you in too late, to be really too effective. But I'll never forget, sitting down at that time as a prospect. I was referred to her by her attorney from Chapter 11, who, got my name from another attorney. And so, I was really more worried about, gee, are they going to have the information that I need to get into quickly so I can determine where the opportunities are and where the issues are and how I can help them quickly. So I was sitting down with them immediately and talking about, well, do you have this statement? Do you have that statement? And the owner lady and her, chief bookkeeper, another lady, were just looking at me, blank stares. It's like, I might have been talking to two mannequins, and I just wasn't getting through it all. And I said, Jim, you're on the wrong track. You need to dial it back. So I just put all my stuff into, my little briefcase. And I said, okay, well, what do you think needs to be done? And it's like the lights went on, all of a sudden they were engaged. I couldn't get them to stop talking. I mean, I was sitting there furious taking notes, every time, they led me down one way, I started asking another question and another question. Before you know it, we were best friends. But it was, I was probably that close to have lost the deal just because my approach was totally stupid, frankly. And And, as I was thinking back on it, it's like, that's not your style anyway. Why did you do that? And it's like somebody kicked me. So what we're going to talk about the rest of the day is based on a couple of assumptions. We've already assumed that you're sitting in front of a qualified, prospect. You've done your due diligence. They're in your wheelhouse. They have a real need, and they can pay. That's important. And so you've done all your work, and this is a real opportunity. So you can put some time and effort into it. So let's put ourselves in the prospect shoes, and I think that was a great segue, by the way, Bob. So, and really, it's not that much different than if you're hiring somebody. You're sitting across the table. Somebody's, in front of you that's got a great resume and, looks sharp, looks the part, talks great, but you still wonder, if I hire this person, is it going to be a disaster? Am I going to get fired? What's this going to do to our bottom line? And if I own the business, am I going to be able to put my kids to college or pay for that wedding or something else? So, they've got a lot of concerns that they're dealing with, and we need to be very sympathetic to those. Of course, how many of you all have heard the old saying, "But you never get fired by hiring McKinsey"? I mean, McKinsey costs a fortune, but people don't get fired, if they hire McKinsey, even if McKinsey screws up. And I can't, think of any times McKinsey has screwed up, because if they screw up, they usually blame the client for not executing properly anyway. So, but I know that's not true. That's just, so when, when they're looking across the table at an independent consultant, it's like, okay, I know you're not with McKinsey. I know you don't have the big organization behind you, or Bain, or any of those others. It's like, you're out there on your own. What happens if you get hit by a beer truck? Or what happens if you get sick? Or what happens if you get another job? Or what happens if you are just totally incompetent, Or what happens if, you decide to do something totally different and I'm left here holding the bag? That's a real concern that you've got to address. Any other concerns you guys can think of? Well, you might have testimonials on your website, but to your point, you're not going to put anything on the website that said, boy, he really cost me a fortune and didn't deliver. So, yeah. So, that's really a good sort of a segue, because, it's all about building that relationship, isn't it? I mean, you've got to establish trust. And somehow, testimonials help, referrals help. That's a good point. So, if I'm hearing you right, it's not just working with me, but it's working with my team, working inside our culture and our system.